Very good morning to all of you. My name is Rohit Bhatia. I am the Director HR from ASSOCHAM, as you all know, and welcome on a Friday morning to all my colleagues from ASSOCHAM. As you know, we are organizing this Learning Fridays for all our employees. Today, we have a very special program for all of you where we're going to talk about more on the importance of uh, how to find a flow where we'll be more identifying the our self awareness and identifying our emotional energy. To take this forward, we have a trainer who I like to introduce to all of you. Just to share a brief introduction about we Miss Subika Milka, if I pronounce your name right. She's a leadership coach, entrepreneur, author, and partner with Power You. She's a dynamic leader with performance coach who has worked with a number of professional and CXOs at all the corporate, industry, and education institutes. She also has worked in past with Deloitte and other companies where she has taken into providing advisory service to a number of small and medium-sized organizations. So she will be taking out next 1.5 hours with you in a very interactive session where I encourage all of you to participate actively through chat mode, where you request to put on your question, query, feedback, whatever questions you have in your mind in the chat box, so that the trainer, today's trainer, or me as a moderator will put up the question and queries to Shobhika, who will answer or try to answer all the questions. Without wasting much of time today, I hand over this session to her. Shobhika, over to you.
Thank you, Rohit, for the introduction. I think I need to share my screen. So I think you'll have to give me access to that. Yeah.
I'm just giving that.
Yeah. So happy Friday, everyone, and thank you for having me here today to explain or to share this program, which is around finding your flow. Just give me a minute to share my screen, and then we can chat some more and begin the conversation here. Can you guys all see it? Is that can you see this? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So, and y'all, I'm seeing the sideboard of this. Are you seeing this, or are you just seeing my whole presentation? Is that what you're seeing?
We can see the presentation.
Okay. Okay, great. So I know a couple of you are dialing in from all over India. So what would be great if you can write in the chat box a little bit your name, the department you're in, the location you're calling in from today, just so that I get to know you, because I have a feeling that over the next 90 minutes, you're going to get to know me pretty well. So I know that, we're slightly in weekend mode. So I am very grateful that you have taken the time, you have taken these 90 minutes to be a part of this program here with me. So if we can get a couple of responses in the chat box, this is going to be an interactive session. So I think you're going to have to start getting familiar with using the chat box and engaging. Otherwise, we're not going to make much progress here today. So please use the chat box, share your name, share your location, share the department you're in, so that I know who's in the room today, and we can engage a little bit more. So I know you guys have been attending a lot of webinars. I get invited to some of them as well. And, I know that we have been conducting a lot of programs at this time over the course of the lockdown, or what seems to be a never-ending lockdown journey. And I understand that some places that y'all may be in are opening up, or it's a lot easier than other places that are much more restricted at this time. But for some reason, despite things opening up, despite life going into maybe a little bit more the kind of zone that we knew earlier, there are still a lot of challenges prevalent, and we are facing, if not those challenges that we faced the last 4 months, the challenges that we're facing today are a little bit more pronounced than they even were in some cases a few months ago. I know for a lot of my clients, they've been talking about, in my leadership and performance coaching practice, they've been saying how their life has become so monotonous. It's almost as if, they're just doing the routine. It's so transactional. They're going to work, they're cooking, they're managing their family and their home. And it's just almost become so mundane in a way. And that fun, that spontaneity, that chit chat that we enjoyed when we used to get water from the water cooler in the office or coffee, or even our lunch breaks have all gone away. And we're just becoming so transactional. And when we thought that despite for some of us commute going away, we're still, feeling a little bit of stress. Some of us are feeling a little bit of demotivation. Some of us may be feeling slightly anxious and uncertain. Some of us may be craving that social interaction. And all of those feelings are becoming more pronounced at this point in the lockdown rather than becoming easier to manage. Because let's face it, we have covered those health goals we wanted to do. We've done a lot of self-development. We've attended a lot of Zooms or WebEx sessions. And we've for those people who are parents, you've gone from parental guilt to parental excess. And I know what's going on in your mind. When is school going to start again? If nothing else starts, when is school starting again? And for a lot of others, we're getting into that zone where we're thinking, when can we go back? Yeah, when can we go back to that life that we knew, that normal that we had earlier in our lives? And when can we just get back to the life that was comfortable and known to us? So when I was thinking about our conversation here today, I came across a very interesting piece, and it said, what differentiates star athletes from the runners up? And it isn't about whether it's not about how much training they're doing. It's not their agility. It's not their speed or flexibility. It's not their motivation levels, because a lot of them are equally motivated. It's not their knowledge. It's not any of those things. I mean, if we just think about star tennis player, and when they have played, a poor shot, they know that they've played that poor shot. But how do they go back to it? You see them physically, they're readying themselves to take on the next shot as it comes along. But most importantly, what are they doing mentally to ready themselves, to be able to face their opponents again? Because let's face it, if they focus on all the things that didn't work, on all the challenges, on all the difficulties of the last shot, they are not going to be able to successfully move forward into the next shot. And that little mistake that they made in the last shot is going to become a really big setback in the near future. So this is what our conversation is going to be around. How quickly do we recover from these setbacks? How do we, despite everything that's going on in our external environment, despite everything that's going on in our internal environment, how do we get over all of that? And how do we get into a state of high productivity and performance? How do we get into that state where we can use some of our recovery rituals and just get into a state that we define as the flow? Because one of the things that studies are showing is that stress levels have gone up, concentration levels have decreased, the ability to handle complexity or problems has also decreased. And for a lot of us, juggling things are becoming more difficult. So despite all the challenges that we're facing 4.5, almost 5 months into our lockdowns, how are we managing? How do we build those rituals and behaviors so that we can recover from all the setbacks that are taking place every single day and lend ourselves to each moment in the most productive way possible? So we're going to talk a lot about that today, and this is what today's session on being in the flow is about. I see that there are 72 of you, but I haven't seen a single message in the chat box. So I'm going to leave you with a few minutes to write your name as well as where you're dialing in from today for my reference in the chat box. I see Rohit's messages to you, but I don't see any message in the chat box after that.
I can see a lot of responses on the question tab. My request to all, please use the chat tab instead of questions so that we use common platform to interact. Let's use the chat option. You can select all the panelist and the organizer only to send the message. Thank you.
So a little bit about the agenda while you all are getting familiar with the technology. I'm sorry, I can't see the questions box at all. So if you all are writing in it, then it's not visible to me. So please use the chat box as Rohit mentioned. And a couple of things of what we're going to try and accomplish here today is we're going to get a little bit into the process of self-awareness. And I'm going to give you, I mean, while self-awareness can be a whole session in itself, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tool to how you can get more self-aware in this moment here today. Where we've been talking about resiliency, and I'm sure you all have been talking about resiliency for the whole time of lockdown, but we're going to talk a little bit about what it means for us in this time and in this space here today. And then we're going to go and acknowledge what are the challenges that are still at the forefront and how can we reframe our approach to some of those challenges. And then lastly, how do we get, despite everything else, what are the steps, what is the framework to get ourselves into the flow? I'll give you a couple, the way the session will work is I will put out a concept there and I will then give you a couple of self-reflection tools to basically think about what it means for you in your life as it stands today. And we will take questions at the end, but I will make a couple of deals with you. Rohit, I still can't see a single response in the chat box. So I don't know whether it's my setting or what it is, but it's going to be a very difficult session if I don't see any responses in the chat box because it's a fully interactive session today.
You can continue with let's sort it out back end. What I try to do is I will type in the responses if I can see. I can see a lot of them doing in the question box, not in the chat box. So what I'll do, I will give you an access to question as well.
Okay, so I know you really request is if we can a few housekeeping points, and I would like to make a couple of deals on this before we get into the session so that we're all on the same page of how the session is going to be conducted. Now, I know a lot of you are very busy, and I know there's so much going on, both at home, both at work, in every space in your life. So I would request you have taken 60, 70 minutes of your time to be here today. So let's dance in this moment and let's make a commitment to ourselves that as long as you're looking at this screen, as long as you're in this space of the webinar, you are 100% present to it. So I'd like to see a thumbs up on some of these deals that we've made so that I can get a sense of your commitment to this. Because I would request you to really take this opportunity for yourself. I know you have calls, I know you have WhatsApp, and you're free to step away from this space if you want to take them. But when you're here, let's commit to being 100% present and to dancing in this moment. So can I see a thumbs up? If that's a possibility, can we have some thumbs ups in the chat box? Right, to some of these deals? Okay. The other thing about this session is it is going to be interactive. I talk, you talk too, and please ask your questions and clarifications along the way because it's equally important that we engage. As I said, there's going to be a lot of self-reflection. There is going to be a lot of engagement, and I would request you to continue that spirit of engagement along the way so that we can then truly learn from each other as the session continues. Okay. The other thing that we have to talk about today is internet issues and bandwidth challenges. If there is a challenge with the internet, the first thing I will do is I will switch off my camera. So if you suddenly see me go off, don't get stressed out because that will help conserve bandwidth. If not, I have a couple of other network lines that I will move to, but know that I'm committed to being here and I will come back even if I drop off in the middle. The other thing is I will make you do a lot of activities. And I know you've been through a lot of sessions. So I would request that since we're dancing in this moment, we keep everything else in our lives, whatever notions we may have of how things are conducted, a little bit to the outside, and let's enjoy the space and participate in it truly and fully. And the last bit, which is the most important bit of the deals that we're making here today, is really we respect the space and each other because nothing here is right or wrong. We all have our perspectives. We all have our own challenges at this time. And let's use this space to share, because you never know, a challenge that you may face and a solution that you may find may benefit someone else in their space today. So can I please get a thumbs up in the chat box? Can I get something? Um, can I get something that I know that all of you are engaging with me here today? Right? So just let me know. Do we have a deal? Yes, I'm seeing a lot of deals in the
Yeah,
questions
yeah.
box.
I can
Yours,
see
I
a lot of
don't.
responses.
Yeah.
I can see a lot of
Yeah,
responses of people giving thumbs up to you.
yes, yes, we are. Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you for your participation, and we're going to introduction of me to you guys, but I just want to say a couple of things about myself that might help you when we're in our conversation here today. So as you know, I'm the founding partner of Empower You. I'm a leadership and performance coach, and I work in the space of behavior and leadership development, and I work across organizations. As you can see, I've had many careers in one career, and I've also studied all over the place in India, in the US, in the UK, and I've lived in all three, worked in all three. And I'm also a published author. But there's something that you need to know about me, which is I believe in constant upgradation. And I believe I have a personal mandate of doing one qualification a year. So that's why you will see many, even if you join me on LinkedIn, you will see many, because I'm committed to constantly learning and growing. But what I really want to turn your focus to is the last two lines that are highlighted in bold, where one of my favorite three C's, chocolate, cheese, and coffee, but not just that. But it's more the fourth C that I want to talk about here, which is my can-do attitude. I became an entrepreneur at a very young age, and from a corporate career, and I moved from a full-fledged corporate M&A career to entrepreneurship. And one of the things that I realized early on in my entrepreneurial journey is I believe I fail every single day. In fact, I don't think there's a single day in my life where I have not failed. But I do feel that at the end of each day, I succeed at something as well every single day. And that's what really entrepreneurship taught me. And that's what I bring here to this space today. The ability to fail every day, but have a success every day. But most importantly, wake up each morning knowing that I can do. And if we had enough time, I would help you find your hashtag. But let's take a can-do attitude to the session here. And this is why I'm so passionate about the topic that we're discussing here today. So in the interest of keeping this interactive, I want to get to know you a little bit more. And I start all my conversations the same way, whether we do it in groups or as individuals. I want to know, what's the mood like in the room? I know this is Friday. I know we're getting into weekend mode, but what's the mood like in the room today? Personally, I'm a little excited. What is your mood like? Please share it in your chat box so that we can get a sense of what's the mood in the room. Stressful, okay? Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Some people are stressed. Anything else? Other moods in the room? Not very good, okay? Anything else? Any cheerful, pleasant, okay? But it's cloudy and it's windy, I agree. It's a very monsoony week, at least where I am. What else? Other moods in the room, and then I will move on. Cheerful, okay? Excited, liberated, it's hot, okay? And now electricity, okay? Cheerful, right? So the reason for getting you to articulate how you feel and what is the mood is because how we show up, or the energy, you're getting more self-aware and curious about how we feel in a moment, can really lend to how we show up to each moment here today. So getting curious about how you feel is the first step to self-awareness. You can see four different quadrants with different zones in front of us here today. And really being able to acknowledge and identify what energy we're bringing to each space helps you align your physical, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual state to each action that you perform. What some people realize is maybe when they're in a high performance energy state, they take on certain tasks than when they're in a low performance energy state. And all of this impacts what we bring to each moment here, and it gives us a little bit of time to get aware of how we're coming to any session and any situation. For example, I may have been a little bit tired in the morning, but when I'm in this zone with you, I have got myself up to being more excited because I couldn't do this session from a zone of tired, but I can do it from the zone of being more excited and motivated here today. So really getting curious about how we feel is a very empowering step. And you can see that there are four types of energies, four quadrants to this energy state. One is a high energy state, the second is a low, and they both have positive energy states and they both have limiting energy states. So I have a very interesting anecdote to share here, which is I was working with a global client of mine, and they are very senior in the financial industry, and they've always been in a high energy state. So they're either on one spectrum, which is in the performance zone, where they're energized, they're optimistic, they're stimulated, they're eager, or they're in the other zone, which is they're impatient, they're angry, they're irritable, and they're always going from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. And then occasionally that leads them to going all the way down into a space of occasional burnout or exhaustion or tiredness. So one of the things that they discovered about themselves in the COVID time was that because their life had slowed down, their energy level was low, but it was actually a little bit more peaceful and serene, and they were not being able to identify with that state because they were automatically reaching the recovery zone, and this time was providing them with the opportunity to recover a little bit more than be in this high energy zone, and it was making them very uncomfortable. And as a result, they were getting more worried and more anxious. Why am I feeling so chill when I really shouldn't be? So hopefully we all go to sleep in our recovery zones, and maybe sometimes we sort of step up to our performance zone at the start of the day. But just, I don't know, for all us yoga buffs out there, all of the states of yoga, tamas, rajas, and sattvic, can also marry to these energy states that are here. And also know one thing: how you feel in the morning will be different from how you feel in the afternoon to how you feel in the evening. So just getting curious about how we're showing up to any moment becomes very important to understand what is going on with you. I'm seeing a couple of comments of light rays, one thing to appreciate myself. Yes, I'm seeing a couple of more comments coming in here on the mood in the room. So getting curious about how you feel is the first step to self-awareness. And let's take our energy, let's understand what's going on. For those of us who said they were feeling a little bit tired, a little bit stressed, and not so great this morning, ask yourself, is this how you want to show up? And what is driving that energy state? And what do you need to be able to switch to maybe one of the higher or lower but positive energy states here in the room today? Because one of the things that we find during the course of lockdown is that people are moving across the continuum. They're either overly anxious, stimulated, or stressed, or then they're feeling a little fed up, tired, and demotivated. So how do we keep ourselves into this balanced state, and how do we show up and be productive in the moment despite everything that's going along? And the good news is, since these are all dynamic, it is our choice of how we show up to each moment. And this is a very lovely quote from the Gita, which is, the one who has conquered the mind, where the mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So the choice rests entirely on us. As we start acknowledging how we're showing up to each moment, is this the choice we make of how we want to show up to this moment? And so we're going to talk a little bit more about all of this as we go along the next hour. But now that we're warmed up, and I will look at the chat box while you do this activity for me, is can we have one challenge that you have faced during lockdown, and what is it that you have done to overcome it? It can be in your work, it can be in your life. I would love to get some responses to this. Yes, Anjan, we will be talking today about reversing the mood. So I would hold on to that question. So what is the one challenge you have faced during lockdown, and what have you done to overcome it? Work-life balance, okay? And what have you done, Nikhil, to overcome it? Started exercising and doing yoga. Trying to maintain the schedule is quite difficult, okay? So a lot of yoga in the room, yes. Socialization, but through video, okay? Anything else? Any other challenge that we faced, and what have we done to overcome it? Start writing, creativity. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, planned the activities. You planned your day. Ragavalu. Yeah.
What normally
Trying
I do is stay away from mobile and internet for some time so that I can re-energize myself and be a little more productive.
absolutely stay okay. So you've done a little bit of a digital detox to basically recharge yourself, right?
Yeah.
So in a short period of time, we can just see how much we have adapted and how much we have innovated. Whether it's just, I don't know, people say work from home, but honestly, I think the way it's gone for our lockdown is it's life from home, right? It's about we're doing everything in the small space of our home that we used to do all over the place, right? Zoom calls, WebEx. Then we're keeping our teams motivated. We're trying to keep our work and business going. For people with kids, we've been teaching kids and managing kids. This is one whole task in itself, right? I'm seeing a lot of yoga from the team here. Cut off, I'm seeing that we've done activities, writing, um, cooking for some of us. I remember one of my clients said they had never made chapatis till the lockdown, so they had started making chapatis. Doing a lot of housework, and learning some new skills. I'm seeing a lot of that. Taking online courses, y'all have been attending a lot of them, and most importantly, being brave. And let's not forget, you made it here. You made it to this conversation here today, despite the webinar fatigue that is setting in. So when we're defining and we're understanding what resilience is, it is our ability to recover from, adjust to adversity, misfortune, and change. We have already been adapting and innovating so much to be able to just get past these 4.5, 5 months. Resilience is learning to bend, not break when the times are tough. And I got caught in where I'm at the moment. I got caught in the eye of the cyclone Nisarg when it happened earlier on in June. And one of the things that I learned from nature during and just looking at our body, or what we call our orchard during the cyclone, was that we had this big old neem tree, and the cyclone winds were lashing it from all sides. And the neem tree was there protecting our palms, protecting our other fruit trees, protecting our mango trees, but it was taking the beating from literally all sides. And because it bent and it took that beating, it protected all the other trees in our orchard from breaking. So a big lesson for me when I looked at resilience was learning, and this learning to bend, not break, was my neem tree, because sometimes for all of us, some of us need to bend a little bit more to protect those at this time who are about to break. And being cognizant of that is also a very big portion of being resilient. So for me, bending not break is always going to signify my neem tree. But let's see what metaphors you come up with that signify bend not break for you. You can feel free to share them in the chat box. But I'm going to go on with the session. But it's really about all of us have gone from being in the same boat to being in the same storm, but in our own boat. Because if you were a really high performer in the office, or you had a really high performer in the office, given the circumstances of work from home and the challenges that they may be facing in their individual life, they may not be able to step up in the way that they did earlier. So being able to recognize the challenges that every individual is facing becomes really important at this time, because not everyone is sailing in the same boat. We're all in our individual boats trying to navigate a very large storm. And it's important to basically be able to get more and more understanding of ourselves also in terms of what do we need to navigate this boat at this time. So I'm just going to go with some more flexibility, absolutely, and to face all this. I'm just going to keep looking at our comments as we go along, right? Because that becomes really important, how we navigate this storm that we're in, and because it's about bouncing back. I don't know if you know about these matryoshka dolls, or we call them roly-poly dolls. You know, you push them down, they come back up. You push them down, they come back up. And we almost feel that all of us are trying to do that at the moment. Something or the other, is giving in 2020. And one way or another, we're all being challenged to step out of our comfort zone and step up to the challenge that we're facing in our own lives and work. And what better, sort of role model of resilience than our own Amitabh Bachchan? A couple of comments on how Amitabh Bachchan has been resilient over the years in the chat box, please. And most importantly, he still got COVID and managed to recover and come out of it. So a few examples of how Amitabh Bachchan has been resilient in his career, in his life, or as a role model of resilience. So he's faced many levels of bankruptcy, of financial distress. Career-wise, he's been all over the place. Health-wise, he's been all over the place. Personally, he's been all over the place. Absolutely. Some of y'all are sending in responses on this. So our very own KBC is a fantastic role model when it comes down to resilience and bouncing back, and most recently with COVID as well, right? So I know what y'all are thinking. I know someone said that, Anjan said that earlier. This is all good in theory, but how will I actually get there? How do we actually accomplish this? Because let's see, what are the new realities we're facing, right? We know that there's a worldwide pandemic. The economy is down, business is down, there are potential job losses, if not job losses. I see it on LinkedIn. I'm sure some of you see every single day people posting, hey, I just got laid off. Please help me. Please help me. There are a lot of challenges with clients, with your members, organizations as well. People are losing wealth. But there's new hybrid models that may be emerging through all of this. And there's the macro level. There is still a lot of uncertainty, but the only certainty we kind of have at the moment is that COVID is here to stay for a foreseeable future. So how do we start looking at those macros from the perspective of accepting that COVID is going to be a part of our life? And same at the personal level, I can see that even in some of our moods here today, some stress, some anxiety, some restlessness, some performance pressure coming in, and a lot of confusion. So at the macro level, the new reality is living with uncertainty. And at the personal level, it's about living with this state of confusion and not necessarily knowing what next. So throughout this course of the lockdown, some of the challenges that we have been seeing across our clients are that, space is a challenge. I get this a lot in a lot of our programs. We're all three, maybe 4 family members, 2 kids, all working from the same space. Everyone is vying for network and data connectivity. In fact, even while we are talking in my house as well, we are on 3 people on 3 different web sessions at the moment. So managing network and data connectivity is very important. computer availability, device availability. Then what someone said, I think Anjan said, no time, right? How do we find that work-life balance at this time? Our passions and motivations are, going up or taking a dip. Where stress levels are a challenge at this moment. Some people have already articulated that. Not all of us feel supported. We're trying to socialize, but we don't have our colleagues and our friends right next to us in the way that we've been used to. Um, Low social engagement, work-life balance, and there is this level of insecurity that we're facing across the board. So let's see. I want a little bit of self-reflection. And what is the challenge that you're facing currently in your work or life? And let me offer a tool to you after this to see of how you can reframe your approach to this challenge. But first, let's articulate what is the challenge that you're facing currently in your work or life. Absolutely. Anjan, I'm going to use your example. He said he was personally locked down and he went through a bypass surgery just a month before, but he utilized the time, the space, and encouraged himself and others and his staff and others, right? Just try to be as practical as possible. That's fantastic, Anjan. Thank you for sharing. So something else, other challenges that we're facing at this time? I'm going to give you a minute to write your responses. Ruby, maybe some challenge from you? Ravi, Manish, Nikhil, some of the women, Nirmal. I'm sure there are a lot of female attendees on the call. What is the challenge that you are currently facing in your work and life? Movement of oneself, absolutely, Anjan. I can understand that. Anyone else? Yes, someone has put their hand up. Self-reliant, always positive. But I'm looking for a challenge, guys. So what is the challenge that you are currently facing in your work and life?
If I can add, as an individual, I am also facing challenge in terms of when I'm working from home. I have to take care of not only my office, but at the same time, I need to manage my home's thing. For example, I have a kid who we need to attend class, so so it's a double work for all of us.
Double job. Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure there are many people in your situation. So, Rohit, I'm going to probe you a little bit further on this and say,
Sure.
okay, if we have to look at reframing your approach to your challenge, okay, so the challenge is that apart from work, ordinarily you would have woken up in the morning, you would have gone to the office, your children would have gone to school, and you would have come back in the evening and maybe supported and helped at that point. But today you're working
Right.
simultaneously, managing, I'm guessing, online school, and being able to still lend yourself to both work, family, and children at this time. So let me ask you one question on your challenge.
Yes, please.
What works about your challenge?
So what I have done, normally if it's been a normal situation, I start my day by 9:30. So
Yeah.
I have a 3 hour slot of my son who need to attend classes. So what I do is I start my day early. And when I say start my day early, it's like I start my working hours starting from 8:30 to quarter to 9. If I'm working from home, I start my day so that by before the 9:30 when the first class starts, my first task of reading out mail, assigning tasks, to-do list is done. And when he starts his class, uh, I have given him I also prepare him before the start of the class, a day before. Checklist, what books, what timetable, what time need to log in, what are login credentials. So that's how I am able to plug in between. my challenge in terms of managing work and home at the same time.
So what has this challenge forced you to do? Or what opportunity has this given you to explore?
Uh, it's more to do with how to handle multitasking, boss at the same time and the father at the same time. I need to manage team. I need to manage my kid as well. So I'm a little more patient now because working with a
Okay.
kid, you get a little more patient to handle him, give more time to adjust to new schooling. At times it
Absolutely.
happens when you're on call, he walks up to you and asks for food to eat.
Yeah.
So so you have to prepare yourself for unwanted or you know or out of surprise you get some task to complete, which you can't say no.
Absolutely. So there are a couple of things, right, that I'm hearing from you. So in terms of what works, A is it's forced you to get up and get a little bit more planned and organized earlier on in the day. Second, it's got you to become a little patient, and then when it happens in the other person you're dealing with in your team, you will also extend that patience to the challenge that they face because you're going through that challenge as well. And I think what it's also made you do is sort of be able to bifurcate your life despite multitasking. You're still being able to balance your life. So there, in every challenge, I think the way the approach is taken is, so what works is that it gives you an opportunity to explore something you would normally never have because your life was already boxed into different zones by your physical location earlier. Now your physical location is the same. So how do you create that bifurcation and those boundaries, or the lack of those boundaries, or what else do you develop within yourself to be able to manage all of that? So I can see a lot of things that are working for you. We all know where it's limiting you, Rohit. And what you manage to do is be able to think about this challenge and look at what's in your control. And what's in your control, what I'm hearing from you, is how you structure your day and really how you manage your own expectations. I mean, you can expect that your child may come in even right now when you're speaking and demands a
Yes.
snack at this point in time, right? And it's just being able to be able to build that, as you said, patience, and be able to manage that expectation of yourself and others, so that even on the call when it happens, we all know that this is a likelihood to happen. So let's take a couple of more challenges that people have articulated. So physical contact has stopped, unable to judge the face feelings of the opponent. um, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Raghav. I cannot tell you how many of my clients who work in sales say this to me all the time, that they were used to, being able to judge, especially in a negotiation, in a pitch, how to judge people based on all those little things, the feet movement, maybe their hand movements, how their body language was. And today we're doing so much on the phone and sometimes not even on video. So what new skill? Let me ask you this, and I will give you some examples as we go along the conversation. What new skill is it forcing you to develop? In terms of what works, what is the new skill that is forcing you to develop? We've acknowledged where it limits you, and if I can just get you to articulate, you can unmute yourself, or you can just write in the chat box. What is in your control in terms of this challenge that you're facing, where physical contact has stopped? Okay, so I'm just going to articulate a couple of the challenges while I hope I'm saying it, Raghavulu um, provides his response. Um, so yes, not giving 100% to staff and clients and sites, right? Starting the day, I think Ruby is also starting the day at 8 a.m., but is also having a very long day till 11 p.m. Managing home and workplace is a challenge. Um, yes, practicing advocate and a professor, right? Yes, so Anjan has said very nicely that it allows him to have new dimensions, to have reinvented himself, which he was not may not have been forced to do the last 25 years. Anik has said, when the lockdown has started, I never went back home from my mess, and I'm still here. Yes, so you've learned a lot of the home, sort of work but your day is starting at 6 a.m. and ending at 1 a.m. So how do you rebalance that? And how do we get a little bit more balance into your life? And maybe, this is a conversation that we can take in the Q&A. Right. Yeah. Nikhil is saying only electronic ways to connect with them. Okay. Talking of this. So what I'm trying to get you to do is we're all seeing so many different kinds of challenges. And I'm just going to spend a minute on it because I can see some of these challenges come into these task buckets. For example, when we think of stress and overwhelm, I see a lot of clients who come in and they say, oh, we're very stressed and we're overwhelmed. And I ask them in this approach but what works about this? And they're like, nothing works. I don't want to be stressed and overwhelmed. But it's about what opportunity is it giving you to explore? Is it the way you bifurcated your task list? Is it that you need to manage your expectations? Is it that you need to manage someone else's expectations? Is it that you need to just sit down and prioritize what it is you need to be focused on? Is it that you're thinking so much about what's going to happen in the future? Is it that you're getting caught off of what life was in the past? Are you being in this moment and thinking about, okay, if there are 100 things that I have to sort out, what is the 3 things that I can accomplish today that still makes me feel like I'm on top of things? So there are a lot of ways in which we can look at stress and overwhelm. In terms of computer availability, technology, network data, we hear this a lot at the moment. I mean, we face it in all our homes as well. It's really about how do we all balance our schedules? And it's getting like, but today, for example, in my own house, I am starting at 11:30. Somebody else is starting at 12. Someone else is starting at 12:30. We couldn't change it, but we're just aware of the fact that there could be network and data connectivity issues because of that. We have balanced the devices. Someone is doing it on the phone, someone is doing it on the computer, someone's doing it on the iPad, just because we have limited technology and devices that are available. So it's about how do you work out the schedule? How do you work out your allocation? And honestly, it just forces us that the time I'm going to be more particular about because I need to give this network or this device over to someone else. And I'm actually getting more productive in that time that I'm there. So when you're looking at all of these challenges, sometimes it's about just reframing how we approach these challenges. If we start thinking about what works about the challenge, how is it limiting us, and what aspect of it can we actually control? Because it's really about only focusing on things that are within our realm of control. We cannot control how long the pandemic is going to continue. We can control our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, and how we approach what we need to do today and in this moment. And again, here are some tips on how do you be more resilient. And we're going to talk a little bit about this in detail as we go forward. Connections, goals, all of those things we're going to talk about in our next section. So before I move, any questions, any burning questions, or anything that's not clear? Because I'm going to introduce our framework, which is the framework of getting into the flow. So before we move into the framework, if there's anything else that we've spoken about that is a little unclear, just share that in your questions box. I'm going to give you 1 minute for that. I think there's a slight delay when I get the questions, so please share your questions and I will respond to them. Okay. If you're good for me to move forward, just tell me good, just give a thumbs up to me so I know I can move on and we're all on the same page. Any thumbs up? Rohit, are you seeing any thumbs up?
Yes, I can see a couple of them. Maybe we can move forward.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, good to roll. Okay. I think all your messages come to me a little bit delayed. So good to roll, Nikhil. Thank you. Diggy, thank you. Parminder, thank you. So today we're going to talk about the framework of getting into the flow. And I'm not going to make this a lecture, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the theory of flow, but more on the practical application of flow. So flow is a psychological framework that was designed after the Second World War by a Hungarian psychologist called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Very difficult to pronounce, very difficult to spell. And what he was a prisoner of war, and one of the things that he realized after the after World War II, was that there was obviously so much going on in the environment, but how do you get people to still be productive? How do you get people to still be in that performance state despite all the negativity and the trauma of what they've been through over the Second World War? So flow is a highly focused mental state towards the production of results. So it's very result oriented. It's very much being completely focused and consumed to be able to get to that space of results. To be able to get into the flow, there are three things that have to happen in alignment. One is your mindset or your mental state, as they call it. The second is your own capabilities and being able to assess capabilities. And the third is being able to navigate the challenge. So it's the alignment of mental state, challenge, and capability that really enables us to get into a state of flow, which then leads to productive action. And the kind of mental states, and it's a before we go forward, it's a dynamic state, which means you're not going to be in the flow all the time. So the flow is a tool that you use to lend yourself to be highly productive in a moment. None of us, so all of us who are saying they're working from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. or 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. None of us are going to be productive all day. You cannot be productive for so many hours in a day. But how do you, even if you lend yourself to 20 minutes because somebody else needs the device or the connection after that, how can you make those your 20 most productive minutes yet? So the flow is a tool that we use. And the kind of mental precursors to being in the flow is about concentration, is about managing your emotional mindset. I mean, I think we talked about the energy states that come into all of this, is about building resilience. It's about handling and dealing with change. And that is what enables us to be in the flow. So what are the 4 steps, or at least what we have outlined, and maybe you can have a couple of more, but what are the 4 steps that we have outlined in our practice to help people as they look to achieve peak performance and flow, right? So I'm going to take these step by step so that it becomes very clear and give you a few tools and tips and examples across each one of these, right? So the first thing that I actually find, and this is something that we added ourselves to this framework, because honestly, I find that a lot of clients and a lot of people we're working with, and I'm seeing that in the conversations and the sharing that you've been doing here today, is we're not being able to be present. And that is a huge challenge that we're facing at this time, because there is so much, as everyone is saying, we're balancing so many different dynamics in our lives, home, work, cooking, grocery ordering, that we're not being able to lend ourselves to this moment and fully be present. I get this complaint from my clients a lot. But before we move forward, let me understand, what does being present mean to each one of you? What does being present mean to you? We did a little bit of that. I said, let's agree to be 100% present. Let's agree to dance in this moment. What does being present mean to you? Accept reality, not think about the past or the future. Lovely. Speaking in terms of work, being completely aware of the task at hand, adjust in a changed environment, right? Not physical, our mind and activities, right? To be focused on achieving. And let me just give you a simple example of this, right? If you're writing an email, but you know you need to order milk, what tends to happen is that we're writing this email, but we're thinking, yeah, I need to order milk. मुझे दूध बना, order करना है. So I'm constantly thinking, and this has happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to you, that while I'm writing this email, I'm thinking I have to order milk. And then in the afternoon, I'm writing another email, I'm still thinking I need to order milk. Tomorrow, I'm still thinking, oh my God, milk is going to finish in 2 days. I need to order milk. And I have actually ended up spending 45 minutes over 2 days ordering milk in my head rather than actually ordering milk, which means that I have not written my email with full presence and focus, and neither have I ordered the milk. And I have not given, or I have not fully lent myself to either activity, that of ordering milk or that of doing my work productively. And this is what tends to happen. And I'm seeing a lot of these comments coming in, which is around the fact of how do we focus? How do we look at what we need to do in this moment? How do we also, another big aspect of being present is just being open to different ideas and perspectives. Because when we're not present, we get stuck sometimes in our own ideas. And we may not change anything, we may not do anything about it, but being present also allows us to accept other ideas and thoughts that are coming in, apart from lending ourselves and being focused on the activity that we're doing. In fact, I'm sure some of you may have noticed that when we did the energy state activity, what did it force you to do? In that moment that you were thinking about your mood, it forced you to actually focus on yourself. It forced you to think, am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling cheerful? What am I feeling? And it brought you truly to the moment that you're in. So being present is really the first step of any form of productivity, because all the other things don't matter if we cannot be fully present to this moment here today. Right? Yes. Okay. The second is reset our mindset, because so much of how we experience any situation, any environment, or anything, and I'm hearing this quite a lot coming from some of the participants like Anjan here today, is about how we think about things, because our thoughts impact how we feel, impact our actions and behaviors. So resetting that mindset and working through it allows us to experience each situation differently. And if we think about it in terms of goals, in terms of priorities, in terms of expectations, for all of you who are struggling with time management, with stress, these are some of the ways, these are some of the buckets where perhaps we need to rethink, what is it that I'm after? What is the goal and priority I need to set? And maybe what expectation of myself and others do I really need to manage? And I'm going to give you a couple of examples on this, so that it becomes clearer what we mean when we're thinking about resetting our mindset. So one of the things that we have is from a sales team that I've been working with. The CEO of this big technology company said that, hey, they are actually, over the course of the pandemic, revisiting their business model almost every month. And they're going to change their approach to goals, priorities, and expectations on a monthly basis. Now, this might seem really stressful for a lot of us, and I'm sure it is for their team. But this is what they are committing to, because they believe that their mindset needs to be reworked, because their goals, their priorities, and their own expectations will change in every step of this journey of the lockdown or the pandemic that we're in. So how do we balance our goals? Because we may have had 100 expectations of ourselves along the way, but what is it that we can truly manage right here, right now? And how do we align our expectations to that? A fantastic discipline of mental mindset is someone like Sachin Tendulkar in his Adelaide series, another sporting reference, and how he didn't play his favorite shot because he realized the opponent had already judged it, and how he disciplined his mind to be able to play other shots, and whatever happens, even if the easiest ball came in, he was not going to hit his cover drive shot because he had decided he wouldn't do it. So resetting our mindset can be so powerful, because it'll help us explore our goals, our priorities, and our expectations. And a lot of the times when I work with people, it's really about what are you willing to let go of? Because managing your expectation, one of the biggest things is, what am I okay to not happen at this time as well? And that becomes a very difficult step for each one of us to sometimes acknowledge and sometimes take forward. I'm just going to give a minute because I can see comments coming in, right? So mindset, soul set, heart set, lovely at this time, right? Focus only on one at a time, right? So a couple of comments coming in. The second aspect of being in the flow is recharging our capabilities. You can see the fully charged battery, and I see a lot of this fatigue battery coming in these days to all the conversations that we are having. And I feel that sometimes in myself, it's not that I'm just preaching it and not experiencing it. And when we're in this space, what do we need? I mean, like what Rohit was saying earlier, what do we need to do to recharge our own capabilities? Maybe the skills we need are more life skills. Maybe we need a little bit more patience. Maybe we need a little bit more emotional intelligence. Maybe we need, better skills of communication. Because one of the things that I find with a lot of my clients, and because we're talking about recharging our capabilities, is I think someone mentioned the challenge that you don't know what your opponent is thinking or saying. So a lot of our clients are saying, what kind of skills do I need to build to be able to successfully communicate online, to be able to successfully negotiate if I can't see the other person, to be able to successfully pitch to my client when the person is not in front of me. I don't know whether they are listening, they're not listening. How do I balance it? What kind of capabilities do I need to build? Because sometimes we take this for granted. We say, "Arey, I've been communicating my whole life. This is a skill I already have," but it's not as simple as just translating offline to online and thinking it will work. There are new capabilities that are required of us. So when we're recharging our capabilities, how are we doing that from the perspective of our outlook, our approach, our skills, and the skills and the approach of the teams that we work with? I'll tell you another example there's a fantastic report by Gartner that talks about 9 new realities, and if you just Google it, you'll be able to find it quite easily. And the number 8 that they have is moving organizations from a culture of efficiency to a culture of resilience. So again, when we're thinking of capabilities, how are we building these capabilities? We may be talking a lot about resilience, but how are we creating an organization which, if that tech CEO has to go by, that can actually be agile, resilient, and adaptable enough that a business model can change every month or regularly, and we are all going to change with it. When I was at Columbia Business School many years ago, they said to me that one of my professors said to me that the single biggest skill of the 21st century is going to be resilience. And I think that's coming out in all our conversations here today. So again, a point when you're thinking about flow, we started with being present. We started with our mindset, but what capabilities do we need to build? Do we need to enhance? Do we need to relook at to be able to balance the challenges that are coming forward to us? And we always think of capabilities as technical capabilities, but look at the 4 other dimensions that we've laid out here today. And then the last bit of the 4th step to achieving flow and peak performance is about rebalancing our challenges, whether the challenge for ourselves, for our work, for our family, or the larger ecosystem that we're a part of. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. While I've been working with the sales team of this technology company, in the initial period of the lockdown, they said, hey, a lot of what we need to do and a lot of our revenue depends on actually physically installing our hardware in certain places. And therefore, with the lockdown, with the limitations, we are unable to do our work. And the CEO also took a call that, hey, let's just take a couple of weeks and chill. So what ended up happening was, in the time of challenge, the challenge was very low. The team's capability was very high because they're obviously a very successful sales team. And what ended up happening is they developed a mindset of demotivation because the challenge was below their capability, and their mindset kind of got a little relaxed and and demotivated as a result. And then suddenly 3 weeks in, the CEO got very stressed and said, hey, no, we have to hit the same targets. His investors were putting pressure on him. And they went up to, he increased the challenge by 200% for some of them. And their capabilities were a bit challenged because how are we going to do this? We're used to physically going to our clients. We're used to physically installing our products. But now we have to do this with, in the environment of lockdown. So that capability was challenged. And as a result, they went from demotivation to anxiousness. So both approaches, whether not giving enough challenge or giving too much of a challenge, challenged their capabilities and their mindset in different ways. So when we were working together to get this team into the flow, we worked on the alignment of the mind, of the capabilities, and of the challenge. So how could we break the challenge down into small, measurable, achievable goals? How could we balance their capabilities? What did they need to build? What skill sets did they require? And what was possible for them in the time of lockdown, given the constraints of the external environment? And how could their mindset go into one that was more performance rather than survival, or rather than rather than feeling a little demotivated along the way? So the steps to achieving peak performance and flow is number one, being present. Second is, how do you align your mindset towards it? The third is, what capabilities do you need to build and recharge to be able to achieve the challenge? And how do you break down that challenge across various realms of your life that is currently in front of you? So let's get some thoughts here. Given I've explained a little bit of what being in the flow means, and of course this can become a much larger program and offering, but what would you be doing if you were in the flow right now? And how would you be feeling if you were in the flow right now? Let's hear from some of these some of these people who are feeling extremely stressed in the beginning, and let's see what we're coming up with right now into the conversation. Absolutely. Still recharging to know some of the unknown. Yes, keep the negative thoughts behind and keep positive thoughts in front. Thank you, Harsh. Right? Let's see. If you were in the flow right now, what would you be doing and how would you be feeling? Sorry, all your responses come a few minutes delayed, so we will wait a few more minutes. Rohit, are you seeing any responses? I'm not being able to.
Just got one which says very pleasant and eager to keep smart targets.
Okay, to keep smart targets. Okay. And the question is right in front of you on your screen. If you were in the flow right now, what would you be doing and how would you be feeling? Let's assume we're in the state of flow right now. What would you be doing and how would you be feeling? Ruby, it'll be good to get a response from you. Rohit, Ramade, you started in excited. Let's see what your response is. Nikhil, it would be good to know if you were in the flow, what would you be doing? Able to overcome the different crises. Okay, that's what someone has said. More attentive. Okay. Thank you, Harsh. Okay, Anjan said more attentive. What else? We've overcome crisis. Can I hear some jump start at desired goals? Okay, great. So when we're looking at being in the flow, let's take this mindset of flow. It's the last day of the week, and how you show up, remember, is a choice you make. So let's decide how we want to show up to this moment here today. Let's do a little bit of action planning as a part of this conversation here today. If we had to look at 5 realms of your life, and you can do this right now, you can do this after the session. What are you going to start doing? What will you stop doing, and what will you continue doing? Right? I need to balance my mind and keep strong. We would be feeling good and energized, able to overcome anxiety and frustration. Okay, Rohit, lockdown started with a bad mood. Now I feel empowered, ready to accept. Thank you. So let's see if one or two people can volunteer to say what would they start doing, what would they stop doing, and what would they continue doing if we look at our week, our month, our life today in the flow. So while we're waiting for responses, I'll share a little anecdote, which is a personal anecdote from a client of mine who said that the biggest challenge was that the family has been, both all the kids as well as them were working so hard, and they had promised everybody a very nice summer holiday on the beach, and they had to, as a result of this entire crisis and lockdown, cancel their beach holiday, and the mood in the house was very low, and they were all feeling very, very blue, literally. And every week was just dragging on because they had all been looking forward to that holiday so much. So then what they did is they decided to put that aside and say, hey, let's recreate a beach day in our house. So they decided to do a beach Sunday where they wore their beach clothes. They packed the picnic they would take to the beach. They had that inflatable pool for the kids. And everybody just had a really good time on that Sunday at home, the whole family, in just recreating that space of the beach. So it was a really fun way of them to take and rebalance their challenge and get themselves into feeling a little bit more in the flow. Yes. So start focusing on actions and stop thinking of results. That's a lovely insight, Raghavulu, because I'm sorry, I think I'm totally mispronouncing your name. But one of my clients did that. Their entire business was in servicing the F&B sector. And we all know the challenge that the F&B sector is facing currently. And they said, how do we pivot? But since restaurants, since hospitality has not opened in its entirety, what can they do as a part of the process? What can they continue pitching to clients as a part of the journey rather than the destination? So that point of how do we focus more on what actions you can take rather than just the outcome of it, because all of that is going to translate and get you to somewhere and make you feel like you're being more productive, more attention. So would be feeling good and energized. So let's, sorry, someone has written a long thing. Start new day, new priority, new challenge, active to balance to reach each moment, right? And that's a lovely thought to move this session forward. So thank you for being so participative and interactive and spending these last 70 minutes with me. So can I get a one-word answer that if you were going to fill one thing into your cup today, as you reflect on this session, what would you add to your cup? And you don't have to go by what's there on the screen, but if there was one thing you were adding to your cup today, as you reflect on our conversation this morning, what would that one thing be? Rohit, do you want to share what would your one thing be as that you will add to your cup as you reflect on this session?
I will be more patient. I'm a little aggressive by nature, so I will be more patient in understanding the situation and surrounding before reacting to it. That would be
Lovely.
one takeaway for me. And yes,
So
certainly
patience,
yes, the positive approach towards this new situation and new way of working.
yes. The positive approach to the new reality or whatever that new reality may even change tomorrow morning. And patience.
Yes.
Akshat is saying coffee is what he's going to be adding. Um, Thanksgiving is what Anjan is saying. Compassion is what Ravi says. Reduce the sugar. Nice. With a new direction, positive outlook, reimagining the past is what Jayaram says. More empathetic is, or sorry, emphatic is what Raghavulu says. Open to new ideas, positivity, positive. Akshat said, okay, coffee with positive. Okay, both are coming into your cup. Rohit says resilience, um, planning play on the routine filled with work. Absolutely. We're all becoming so, even in our home, we said the same thing. Everything is so transactional. How do we add some fun and spontaneity to our lives? Remember how much fun we had before. Why has life become so structured these days? Let go of what is not in our control, is what Ravi says. Lovely. Thank you so much. Let's just outline some of the takeaways. We developed a little sense of presence and awareness. We thought about resiliency and what it means to our lives today. And we looked at ways in which we could reframe our approach to challenge. And we took a little bit of an understanding of flow and 4 steps on how we can achieve it. And we had a few self reflection points because remember, COVID is here to stay. We are in a long, winding road ahead because the impact of COVID is going to last. So, how quickly we can align ourselves to whatever this new reality is and step up to our challenge every day, every minute is going to be entirely dependent on us. So, I'm here to take any questions and feedback. Please reach out to us across our social media platforms. You can tag me, you can tag EdPowerU, and just stay in touch. I'd love to know how you get on with your life and your month post this session. We will also be taking some of your contact details from the team because we're going to be sending you a couple of assessments and maybe a couple of tools as a consequence of this conversation.
Sure. I have a couple of questions in my mind. I have thought about the topic earlier. So
Sure.
if I think for 2 minutes you can briefly take up this two question of mine. Uh,
Sure.
with the new situation coming up, the new working style coming up, the new unpredictable tomorrow is for everyone. What's going to happen with us tomorrow? How we going to work? We don't know. So so from you as a leadership leader, coach, a mentor, what are the three skills all individuals should have in current situations so that even if tomorrow we are unaware about what will happen tomorrow, we can handle it better? Three skills, yeah, three.
I would say there's many more than three, but I'd say the first skill is really being able to be adaptable and resilient. I think that goes without saying because that will enable us to then adjust to whatever that is and not get fixated on anything because things are going to change and evolve and they're going to keep changing and keep evolving. So I would say that's one. The second that I always say is the ability and a follow up from resilience is the ability to balance and be able to understand what is a want and a need at any time. Because I think that has changed quite significantly for all of us. What we thought of as a must do or what is a must have has, versus what is a nice to have changes quite a bit when we're faced in situations like this. So the ability to balance wants and needs. And the third most important thing is to develop that ecosystem and nurture those relationships. So if we start thinking about the collective, if we start thinking about the ecosystem, then the individual will get taken care of within that ecosystem alone. So I think taking that collective mindset also becomes really important. And in terms of just basic skills that we will need as individuals, I think it's about how do we learn to work through hybrid models? Maybe today I will be sitting here in a web, maybe there'll be another side of me there. But being able to successfully navigate different mediums and words and zones becomes very important. And we seem to think that we can take whatever we did in our meeting offline and we put it online. But the truth is, we're not being like, if I was in a conversation with y'all were 70 people today. If I was in a conversation with y'all in a room, I can see each one and what they're doing. Whereas today I can't. So what is the tools that you can use to engage everybody in the meeting so that you know what's going on? Or how effectively are you communicating? So I think that has become extremely important in how do we work remotely, and most important, how do we communicate and make that space inclusive at this time. So there's a little bit more than three, but I think these are all very important new skills. And there's some fantastic reports on future skills that we're all going to need um, as we go forward in whatever this new reality turns out to be for all of us.
And how about how, as a people manager or as a team manager, apart from adaptability and open at approach, what are other few new new quality as a leader I should adapt so that my team is more acceptable to my decisions as well as to new norms. So as a leader, what should I develop as a people manager?
So I would say the one is that line of this is work and this is home and this is the person at home and this is the person at work has got very blurred. And we're actually now dealing with the individual much more than dealing with the professional. And that is the space that leaders, especially people leaders, need to manage very carefully, because it's about the work of a leader now has become much bigger than it was earlier, because today you're also providing that psychological safety, you're being more empathetic. It's a lot of emotional intelligence in how you're responding. If you want people to understand your challenges, you have to be able to understand what's going on with them. And if we're all in our little boats in a storm, then what is driving that boat and how can you help them stay afloat? So personalization, humanization, creating that space of psychological safety. And, honestly, the biggest thing is trust. When people are sitting, I know I get this a lot, especially this time is very hard for people who are micromanagers. Um, because they're used to having their teams there, and they're used to seeing what people are doing all the time. Whereas if you step away from it, and you look at what people are doing, I mean, you have to trust. I have to trust that you're going to do your bit of the task, and I have to trust that that person is going to do that bit of the task, because you're not sitting in front of me for me to sit down and see and evaluate every single thing. And that's why people are so overwhelmed. I speak to a lot of teams and leaders. They've got calls 14 hours a day because they're sitting there thinking that they can remotely monitor what each person is doing. That's not possible. At the end of the day, I have to trust that each person in the ecosystem is going to do their bit, because, and then we're going to build it together. It's impossible to micromanage. So being able to do away with that and build more trust in your team, sorry, I don't know what happened, becomes important at this time. So I would say the role of a leader has definitely extended beyond to, as I said, humanization and just an understanding, to personalization of their conversation with you, as well as just building that environment of safety psychologically as well as trust.
Very well said. The most important factor between any two relationship is the trust factor and the communication factor, which is need of the hour right now. People need to, as a people manager, I should trust my team so they'll be more productive and they can perform better. Uh, I think time is the only limit, unless, or we would have extended much more and thought about more discussions on various other aspects. Thank you so much for your time, Jubika. It was a great learning experience for me. I have made my notes. As a leader, I will
Thank you.
certainly keep up some points and I've tried to implement with my team. Majority of them are already
Thank you.
listening and part of this conversation and training session. So they would be they would be probably experiencing it in coming days. Uh, being little more approachable and little more better boss,
Yeah.
be a better manager to say that. And a couple of my colleagues also are part of this subnet, so they will also be more. approachable and more better manager than they were earlier. With this note, I
I
would
hope
like to
so.
thank all the participants, especially Subika, for taking out the time, explaining things in detail. Especially, I like the four-step approach for achieving the flow. I want to put a chart and start monitoring it. I do a proper monitoring on a weekly or a fortnightly, and so that I can improve upon. And as I always believe, learning is a journey. You have to keep updating yourself. And being an HR of ASSOCHAM, this is my also uh, way of doing it. I have started a session like Learning Friday, so we do a lot of learning activity on Friday morning, so that they can go back and take something and work on. Thank you so much, Rubika, for this time. We'll
Thank
certainly
you.
have more workshop with you in coming days. And thank you everyone for joining us. And stay safe, stay healthy, be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.